All right, welcome back to the How to Relate podcast. Hi, Drew.
What's going on, Brittany? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. What a day.
I know. I actually keep forgetting. I'm not a Halloween guy, and I kept forgetting all day today that it was Halloween.
I'm not a Halloween person either,
Yeah.
which might tie into our topic today. But yeah, all day I'm like, oh, right, people are dressed up. Oh, right,
Yeah.
it's Halloween. And it feels like such a bah humbug way of being on a holiday that's supposed to be
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
It's just like, if I have to decide what I'm going to be and what I'm going to wear and it takes pre-planning, I'm out. It's not happening.
100%. Yeah. In college, I just bought this big Wheaties box. So like my face would be in it, and then like my arms would be around it, and then I would literally just like be walking and shuffling, and I would just be going from like to party to party or to parties with it, and it was cumbersome, and I knew people hated me, and I don't know, but I did it all 4 years too, so I was just like, this is ridiculous.
I kind of like that you got some use out of this though. And it's like, hey, one costume all 4 years, the
Yeah,
best way of being.
yeah. Some of my identity was formed around that Wheaties box. Like that's that guy that dresses up in the Wheaties box every single year.
Yes. You're
Yeah,
that guy. You are now known around campus as the Wheaties guy.
as a Wheaties guy. Yeah,
I guess there's worse things to be known for in college,
definitely.
but
Yeah, yeah. But I would never know how to take it. I'm like, is this a compliment, or do I need to make more effort in my Halloween costumes? But yeah, even growing up, I never knew like the fascination behind Halloween, and I don't know, my family didn't. We weren't super into it, so it just passed down on me, which is all
yeah.
will also be a great example for later too.
Oh, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. So I guess precursors for the audience. We're kind of shaking some things up on the podcast. So each month, Drew and I are going to be deep diving into a topic, and a big reveal is shame. So we'll deep dive into the topic of shame, how shame exists, the definition, the many definitions that exist around it, and how we can start to heal shame. So
Mhm.
this is our first time doing this, which is fun.
I'm pretty pumped up, especially. I mean, whether everybody is aware or not, like we carry some type of shame, right? So I think it's going to be relatable in so many different aspects, to various populations too. So I'm really eager to hear what the listeners have to say about it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. And it's such a deep topic too, that it feels like you can go down many different avenues with it. Like I was re-listening to, of course, Brene Brown, her work on shame and vulnerability, which
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of, so much so that back when I worked in a treatment center, they would be like, oh, Brene Brown. Like they would look at
yeah,
me and go, oh, Brene's your girl. Oh, is she going to throw out a Brene Brown quote? Like I would get kind of made fun of for how much I quoted her and was obsessed with her work. But you know
yeah,
what? Again, I own it, embrace it, whatever.
right.
So yeah, so even in listening to her TED Talk again today, I was like, "Oh, man, like she's talking about all of the systemic things like racism and then even
Yeah,
things with like men and women and families. And so it's a topic that hits on so many different points for us as individuals and then also society.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point too, as far as like that it could be collective shame, individual shame, maybe a family systems approach that it's not limited to. Yeah, there's not a lot of limits to experiencing this type of shame too, right? Which I don't know, makes it pretty fascinating. So there's so many directions that we can go with this.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. So today I think we're going to kind of narrow in on what shame is, how it exists, uh, what symptoms come from shame, and how we can heal it. But we're not going to cure it, but we can start to
no,
heal it.
yeah, right,
The goal isn't to eradicate it, it's just to start to feel more at ease from it.
right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, to get to the punchline. But all right. So we'll deep dive into, or first off, APA definition. All right. The American American Psychology. What is the stuff? What is this association? American Psychology Association. Someone will correct me. Anyway, so it defines as shame as a negative, self-conscious emotion arising from the feeling that one's conduct or circumstances are dishonorable, immoral, or improper. It is characterized by a sense of being fundamentally flawed, inadequate, or bad as a person, often leading to a desire to hide, withdraw, or avoid social judgment. Shame is different from guilt, which focuses on a specific behavior, while shame involves a global devaluation of the self. So, total
Man,
devaluation of self is basically what
yeah.
shame is.
Yes. I was just thinking about that, especially that word of de-evaluation. I guess one, I think obviously everything in there, I would definitely agree with, but the de-evaluation of the self, right? And I guess the biggest thing, and we'll get into it as far as like uh, the development of human beings, right? As far as like what separates us from like human beings and animals, right? As far as like our awareness of the awareness that we have as value that we bring as an individual in society into a family too, right? And then if we're inherently told that we no longer have like some type of value, even at age 2 or 3, or whether it might be 16 or 35, right? It's so interesting. It's so interesting to see that that can be brought in at any age too. And yeah, like I said, it can happen in a group or individually too.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't discriminate, that's for sure. That
Yeah.
and I guess to bring it back to Brene Brown's work, she has a story of she was doing a book signing, and it was when she was just studying women. And a guy comes up to her and says, "So you just study women?" And she says, "Yes." And he said, "Well, that's pretty convenient." And she says, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, it's convenient to study women because it leaves us men out of the conversation. When you're talking about being vulnerable, you're talking about being open, which is essentially against all of the masculine traits that we as a society assign to masculinity." And he
Yeah.
looks back to his wife and 3 daughters and he says, "If any of them, they would rather see me fall from my white horse than to be vulnerable. They would rather see me fall than to actually open up and talk about what I'm experiencing."
Hmm.
So it was then that she started to do more research and started to include men. So then it was that the narratives with the, I mean, taken to men and women, but it was that these narratives started to become invasive in terms of media, how we identify as men, women, and then you can go into race, your career, social status, socioeconomic status, and how there's all these societal stories that then influence our sense of self and how
Yeah.
we experience shame.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, especially for experiencing that, like obviously there was a risk involved with saying that because you knew who Brene Brown was, right?
Right.
There was risk involved in that, and there had to be a desire to rewrite his shame story. And obviously there was memories and experiences that took on his role as a husband, right? Um, but yeah, just and I mean, as a guy working in the mental health field, I mean, that could not be more true. Like the amount of times that I've gotten inquiries from like like a wife or a girlfriend or a child or a parent of a male seeking therapy is far more than female seeking therapy. It is astounding the amount of times that if it's the significant other or anybody associated with that individual that they will be emailing me first. And especially as like the first impression, it obviously is so important as far as building rapport, right? So I think that example right there is a big indicator, especially just just the simple of asking for help is so difficult for men too.
Sure. So that you're getting the essentially the loved ones to say like, "Hey, they need help," or that
Yeah.
whoever it is, my son, my significant other needs help, like, but he's not going to ask. So I
Yes.
need to be the one that asks.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting how it shows up.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
yeah. So, how does shame begin? You want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So we'll talk about development and especially children and how they experience some type of shame, right? Shame typically begins to emerge in children between the ages of 2 and 3, especially as their sense of self and ability to evaluate themselves in relation to others' development. Children may recognize that they have fallen short of certain parents' standards, and we'll call that just as like getting in trouble, right? The timeline also aligns with Erickson's stage of autonomy versus shame and doubt, which occurs from roughly 18 months to 3 years, highlighting that shame is closely tied with the growth of self-concept during early childhood.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. I look at toddlers and I think they go through an existential crisis. And that's why they're really acting out because they have no idea how to handle an existential crisis. It's
Yeah,
it's a time where I'm separate from my parents. So I now see myself as separate from you. Whereas before it's like I look at you and we're one because that's just, you attune to my needs and that's what matters. Therefore we are one.
yeah,
Then there's a, "Oh, wait, I have a self-concept. I have a separate sense of self." And even as you, like, hold kids looking in the mirror, they'll start
yeah,
to recognize, "Oh, that's me." Like, whereas when they're babies and maybe, like, 4 or 5 months old, they're not seeing themselves as them. So, it's like, I'm separate from you. But I also have no idea how to meet my own needs because I don't have a job and I
yeah,
can't work, so I can't provide for myself. So,
right.
there so then it's like I'm looking to you to then love and support me, and I want my own, like, way of doing things. I wanna I might throw a temper tantrum if you put me in that sweatshirt or if you take away my toy, if you tell me that
Yeah,
it's bedtime. Like, I might just really lash out because I don't have I'm not at the developmental phase where I can handle my own and big emotions, but I
right.
also need you to take care of me. So it's this huge crisis that I feel like that they go through. And
Yes.
and while it might be irritating to a lot of people and parents, it's also like that autonomy versus shame is like, am I an autonomous person? Like, can I do things?
Yeah,
Am I capable? Am I separate from you? Versus the
yeah,
shame and doubt is like, if you're telling me that I'm bad or that I'm wrong or am I doubtful of myself? And that like anxious slash avoidant type parenting might actually come into play in this stage for toddlers.
yeah. It's funny, I use the example of, let's say, you're a college student and you go to a university that's, you grow up here in North Carolina, and then all of a sudden, you're like, "You know what? I'm gonna go to Berkeley. I'm gonna go to Berkeley in California. I'm not gonna know a single person. I'm gonna rewrite my identity," right? You don't know anybody from high school. You don't know any of the professors. You've, been there for the visit orientation, right? But you don't know anybody. And then you get there, you unpack your bags, you meet your roommate, and then sometime along throughout that day, you're alone and you're just sitting in your bed, your room's fully decorated, either you're sitting across from your roommate and there's this silence of being like, now what? And that's like, and that's one of the first times, especially, I mean, I know we're talking about toddlers, but even as adults, that's the first time that we're feeling almost lost, right? And as toddlers, we have this attachment to our parents, but as college students, that's one of the first times that we're feeling like this autonomy of like, oh my gosh, I'm responsible for um for what I'm feeling right now, and I have to do something well, and I need to learn work quick to cope with this because I've never felt this before. And throughout college and throughout that stage of development, you have these first time experiences and that therefore you have these first time emotions, right? But when you look at for toddlers, it's uh as you're going through these life stages, you're even experiencing the most simple emotions for the very first time almost every single day versus college students. It's like you experience one or two new situations and feelings like maybe like once a week or a couple times a week, but then like you see these emotional breakdowns, right? I want to drop out of school. I can't do this anymore. My grades suck. I'm going to restrict my eating, or I'm going to turn to drugs, alcohol, or having sex, getting partners. You know what I mean? So it's just so interesting to see like a person's relationship with the first time they experience emotions too. That's
Yeah.
taught through our caregivers, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, like, when you were depicting that, like, being in your dorm room and you're sitting on your bed for the first
Yeah.
time, like, "Holy shit, I'm alone," like, I can, like, remember that feeling of, like it's like because
Yeah.
it's a whole new world, it's a whole new way of being, and it's really the first time that it's everything is up to us. Before, we had our expectations, we knew we had to go to school, or else, like, our parents were gonna know if we didn't, like, but now it's like, there's an untethering of like, yes, I have expectations in front of me, but it's all up to me now. It
Yeah.
like everything is in my jurisdiction.
Yeah. And I think, and especially when we're facing those first time emotions too, as far as like, I mean, we're talking about shame right now of, um, is this a good or a bad thing that I should be experiencing this too? Or I can't believe that I don't have the ability to cope with this. And this, going into these experiencing and having this inherent belief that, that if I'm feeling that I'm unlovable, I'm inadequate, or other neural cognitions that we just might have this inner beliefs about ourself about, then, we're going to look for experiences that match those internal beliefs too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, our brains like to be right, they don't like to do things differently. So when people talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy or repeating the same kinds of mistakes, I think to like what you're saying, it's that it's
yeah.
those are tied to a self-concept. So it's going to be that self-concept is reinforced through behavior. And then it's, you know, the identity piece, then I do the thing that matches my identity. And then I might feel the shame or the guilt that comes with that. But because it's my identity, I keep doing it. So it's
Yeah.
going to keep happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, especially when we're like for the example of the toddlers of if our parents are saying, uh, like, "You make me so mad," or "The reason why I yell all the time is because of you." What's like the you're gonna like anybody's gonna walk away from that feeling like, "Oh, I'm the problem, that's causing all of this right now," rather than reframing it of being like, "Oh, my behavior, has been poor in the past," or I made an incorrect decision," versus saying, like, having a parent repeatedly say, "You are the reason why I am this way," and then you're gonna go into your marriage, and you're gonna or into future relationships, and you're gonna think like, "Oh, well, I might be the problem, or my partner is going to be the problem, and I'm just gonna repeat what my parents told me to my partner too." Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're just deflecting shame or putting shame onto other people at that point in time too.
We're almost making it their responsibility.
Yeah, right.
In some ways. Well, okay, it goes in a few different accounts, which we'll get into of like how shame exists because I've definitely seen it in couples work where there's a few ways it goes. It goes into I make it your responsibility to heal this part of me. And so then I might blame you, I might deflect onto you, I might project all my stuff onto you because that's my shame. And if shame is tied to self-concept,
Yeah,
then that's going to come into the relational space. And my lovability is up to you. So how much you love me is then how much I can see myself as lovable. So
yeah,
it goes into that space and then it'll act out in that defend, blame, criticize, contempt, the four horsemen that Gottman talks about in that
yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, which kinda dissolves this sense of unconditional love that it's pretty much testing, like, you loving the other person is just basically conditional at that point, and it's a series of experiments and tests, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's because I think when like shame doesn't do well with boundaries, like it has no beginning and end. So if there's no beginning and end to it, and if
yeah,
someone's shame is like dialed up to a 10, if we're on a 0 to 10 point scale, someone's
Yeah.
shame is down up to a 10, then it's going to be that they're looking at other people as an extension of how they see themselves. And then everyone is like, if you're telling me that I'm not lovable and you're telling me that love is conditional, then therefore I should be able to like treat you
Yeah.
like shit and that you should love me back. But
Yeah.
that really does stop after like we're kids. Like it's like that toddler age is like really where that starts to like start to have an ending when we become like adolescents and into adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I was gonna say, I bet you see that a lot in working with couples too. Um,
It yeah.
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 I was
It's
gonna,
like
sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was just gonna say, sometimes you'll see someone's, like, really young self
Yeah.
really quickly in a couple setting. Like,
Mm,
also, like, sometimes they'll be, like, an individual, it's like we are present, we are in our adult self, like, it is 2 adults talking. When we get into our intimate partnerships, they often mirror
yeah.
our
Right.
parental relationships. So then it's like it feels like there is this part of me that starts to come out that feels very young or that
Yeah.
feels like it's still looking for that need to be met and then that might come out in the romantic partnership.
Yeah. Man, interesting. When you were talking about, like our inner child too, and bringing insecurities into these situations, I was thinking of what we talked about previously, in working with athletes, and playing time too. He might be a freshman in high school, right? But the coach and others and the team dictating the limited amount of snaps that an athlete might get, right? As far as like he was king of the castle at maybe 4 or 5 playing flag football, right? But then all of a sudden these other people are dictating of saying like, well, you have to earn this, right? And it's just hard to accept, um, especially as kids, that we're not going to be able to get like every single opportunity that others might get, right? And I think that translated to that freshman playing football too for the very first time as well. It's just uh, him communicating with his inner child at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. That that does land because I mean that hits on so many contexts. Because okay, I'm thinking about that athlete in that scenario, right? I think and wondering even if it's around how they relate to, let's say, their parents. Like, if their parent is,
yeah,
like, berating them for not getting the playing time, and then maybe even
yeah,
berating the coach, that there's this idea of, like, that you're saying that there's something wrong with my kid and that they're
yeah,
not getting enough playing time, and then it's like, "And how dare you not get enough playing time? What, are you not working hard enough?" Like, if there is that kinda dynamic, then shame is gonna be really deep and present. If
yeah,
it's like, "Hey, you can handle that disappointment around not getting enough playing time, and you can still say that you are a good player or that you work hard on the field or that you enjoy doing this," that you can
yeah,
hold the and both, that
yeah,
can help alleviate senses of shame because it's, "This is what I do, this isn't who I am."
yeah, yeah. And I think that really brings us. That's a really good segue into talking about the next aspect of like of acknowledging that shame is very different than other emotions, or other emotions can um, be a seed for shame as well. So we'll talk. I mean, of course, like we've been able to identify shame and then guilt. Like shame is, I am a bad person. Guilt, I've done something bad previously, or I made a bad decision, right? And then we also have a couple of other ones as far as humiliation. Humiliation is something I use the example of bullying, of something external that comes from other people, that is brought on to ourselves, right? This isn't an original thought or idea that we carry into a situation. It is this ninth grade football player who might be bullied because he's wearing pink shoes, right? This is an idea from somebody else, and someone else attempting to devalue us, based on us wearing pink shoes to football practice, right? I think also, another example is awkwardness of you not knowing anybody on the football team, and going to practice for the very first time. And, uh, this is a weird example, but like, what do I do with my hands? Like, do I put my hands on my hips? Do I just let my hands hang down? Do I put my hands on my pads? I'm not sure what to do right now. Do other people, are other people judging me right now? And that feeling can go into so many, different other, emotions to experience. But I think also recognizing that awkward is a temporary emotion. Just, I mean, every emotion is temporary, right? But feeling awkward isn't something that isn't going to last forever, right? So we got awkward, and then this sense of like also being embarrassed. And I guess being embarrassed, that could be, um, I guess awkward and embarrassed are very similar, but embarrassed might come is different than feeling humiliated, because embarrassed is an original thought. I don't know, I kind of believe that, based upon like either previous situations or this neurocognition of I don't know what to do with myself right now, or how can I make this situation better, or just having this, uncomfortable feeling, of going into a first time experience, and yeah, and having that difficult feeling is something that comes from an internal versus an external, uh, factor.
Yeah. That it's like if humiliation comes from an outside source.
Yeah.
Awkwardness is, like, I'm thinking about what I need to be doing. There's a sort of a space between what am I doing and what I should be doing,
Yeah.
and it feels like there's a messy middle. And then
Mhm.
embarrassment comes from the inside about what other people might be thinking of me in this moment. If I trip and
Yeah.
fall, other people saw that. What are they thinking of me? I'm so embarrassed.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, there's such importance of recognizing with those 4 of guilt, humiliation, awkwardness, and embarrassment. I feel like sometimes those can be a segue into experiencing shame of, okay, I've had this feeling, I acknowledge this feeling, and we'll get into, like, what Brene Brown says of how to manage that feeling, right? And then how to isolate that so it doesn't turn into shame of, I am an embarrassment, or I am always embarrassed, of no matter what I'm doing, right? Or people have told me that I am awkward, so therefore I believe that I am awkward, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's, what this experience is versus what's my identity.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that goes back to what you were saying earlier as far as like self-concept too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, talking about how shame develops, um, you have a really good analogy for this. I like the visual that you have.
Yeah. Uh, so uh, I stole it a little bit from my boss. So I'm going to give her credit as well. So, uh, basically the development of shame. So whenever I'm talking specifically with a patient, I'll use a garden, right? And so let's say in half the garden gets no sunlight whatsoever. The other side of the garden, it's watered, it gets sunlight, gets all the nutrients that it needs, right? So on the dark side of the garden, basically, since it never gets any sunlight and it never, nothing is ever revealed, or there's no nutrients whatsoever, what typically grows in the dark? Nothing but, uh, nothing but like mushrooms, fungus, like nasty things are typically things that grow in the dark. Mold. And then on the other side, we got these beautiful flowers, we got roses, we have fruit, we have vegetables, we have all these things that give us light, right? And so, like, whenever I talk about shame, I say, what are typically things that build shame? Secrets, silence, and things that we typically, keep in the dark. And the more that we keep in the dark, the more that it grows. And unfortunately, even though we might have all these good things on the other side of the garden of these fruits, vegetables, and things that we've intended to grow, if we ignore shame for as long as we might, that the dark side of the garden is going to overtake the light that we've tried to create. So with those secrets, with those silence of, even though we've tried to push shame away, that eventually it will ruin our garden. ruin our sense of identity too.
Yeah. It reminds me, there's a saying in AA, you're only as sick as your secrets. And like your secrets grow in those dark places.
Yeah.
And those are what I mean, of course, in AA, the whole idea is like, you're sharing because you're overcoming your own denial and your own barriers around what has kept you sick for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that is that like, a part of their prayer or just a phrase that they use often?
Great question. I think it's more like just like a phrase. Like so when I worked in addiction, the fun part about working in addiction is that every group would come in and it would be like, here's this sort of like fortune cookie like saying that would come from different, I'll say 12-step groups. So it'll
Yeah.
be like, oh, you're only as sick as your secrets, or just when the devil's doing push-ups in the parking lot, just when you think that you can take a rest. So it's like
Mm.
the idea that you always need to be working on your sobriety. Like there's always these like kinds of things that just started to get kind of like put into the
Yeah.
vernacular around like addiction treatment. And so it would just be, I don't know how it comes about, but it's just like unanimously like, oh yep, you're only insecure your secrets, up, your devil's doing push-ups, up, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever else the saying is for that. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Lots of
Yeah.
fortune cookie sayings, which are great.
Yeah. Gotcha. But, hey, if you repeat it enough, you start to believe it though, right? The
Oh
mind
yeah,
sees what
for
it wants
sure.
to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah,
Gotcha.
no, in so we'll get into the idea around like vulnerability being the antidote to shame. Like that there's this idea of shining light, I think is the vulnerability that Brene Brown often talks about to help heal shame.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, do we wanna get into vulnerability now?
Sure, why not? Since we're here.
Yeah,
So
since we're here.
all right. So vulnerability is defined by three characteristics: uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So when we think of shame, and if shame really thrives in secrecy, in kind of all those dark places, um, can't remember where I have it, but what was it? Secrecy. Oh, there we go. So shame thrives in secrecy, silence, judgment, and criticism. Vulnerability helps to create the emotional exposure, risk, and uncertainty, like to help shine the light on those places. So vulnerability is not easy. It is very difficult, as you can tell from the characteristics around vulnerability. However, with practice, it does start to become like a new way of being. So when we think about, oh, this is like when we think about vulnerability and what might keep us from being vulnerable, we can start to name it. Oh, this is uncertainty. Oh, this is risk. Oh, this is emotional exposure. And I work with a lot of people in the dating realm, and I'm like, yes, dating is probably one of the most vulnerable things you can
Yeah.
possibly do because there's a lot of uncertainty. It feels risky, and you are exposing yourself emotionally to someone else to see if you
Yeah.
want to build a relationship or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, uh, I'm thinking about dating apps too, of I don't know, actually, that's a really I just had this thought as well as far as vulnerability on dating apps, does thick skin, well, I didn't have a match or he or she ghosted me or, um, I don't know, having so many matches and just having all these conversations, right? How does vulnerability of, "Okay, well, I'm gonna continue like, putting in efforts and, but I feel like all my dates are failing, or I feel like all my efforts are failing," right? Do you find, especially with your patients, like, what does the relationship with vulnerability and shame become then as far as, like, unsuccessful means to an end?
Yeah, it's funny you mention this. So I actually was reading an article that was done by the NIH around self-esteem and shame, and that I don't think it's any surprise that if you have low self-esteem, it's correlated with high levels of shame. But I
Yes.
think that self-esteem being like how much you like yourself, and that can help build resiliency when it comes to dating apps and rejection and self-story. Because
Yeah.
like people get, and it's understandable when you're on dating apps, it's exhausting to feel like I'm putting myself out there by trying to swipe right or hit the match with this person and I
Yeah.
get nothing back, and maybe I like was really hoping that I would. Maybe I was really looking forward to potentially meeting that person. But
Yeah.
then I like what I try and help navigate is like, okay, we can just take it as like what is, right? We don't know what's
Yeah.
happened for that person. We don't even know if they're still on the app. They might have deleted it and their profile is just still up. We don't even know if they saw it. We don't know if they're
Yeah.
busy.
Going
Like
to the
we have
what
no
ifs.
idea. Right. We can
Yeah.
kind of go into like the what ifs to try and create the resiliency against like how do I protect myself from the shame story that it is me and it's
Yeah.
because I'm so it's because I didn't have this on my it's because I didn't have I love to travel on my profile. It must be because of that. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, or
Yeah.
it's
That this is a
because
reflection
there's
of me. This is a
of
reflection of my
me.
decisions. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like it is a bit of that exposure therapy in a way for
Yeah.
some people, but it also can be like the exhausting pieces are like, "Hey, I'm really tired of this exposure all the time."
Yeah. So I guess it's not really necessarily like numbing, like continuing to engage in the risk of, I guess I think of the role of hope and vulnerability of I have hope within myself that one day it's going to work out. And that the role of hope is also going to pretty much give gas to vulnerability that's going to make me continue to engage in these experiences too of that we use these what if statements in order to make sure that we're not creating a shame story
Yeah.
and not letting I guess I call it like the pain system to override our thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, like because I think that the hope is really the medicine for uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like, we can lean into the uncertainty because we have hope. We don't know how the story is gonna turn out, but we do have hope that it's gonna go the way that we would want it to by putting ourselves out there. If we're
Yeah.
just kinda putting ourselves on the bench, then there isn't really hope nor movement, and we're just letting the uncertain story become maybe doom and gloom by not putting ourselves out there.
Yeah. Definitely. I think so we had mentioned earlier about um a healthy sense of shame, right? And I don't know, some of the listeners might be they're like, "What? What is going on right now?" But I think if we don't have some type of healthy sense of shame, we're walking around like a bunch of narcissists, right? And then we're not experiencing failure, we're not experiencing learning experiences and all the things that come from like those crucial parts of our lives, right? So I guess I'm thinking about like dating apps, right? And one could say, okay, I'm just, let's say an unsuccessful match, and one come away with it and be like, all right, I'm never gonna try this again. Mm, This sucks. I need to change up the way that I'm doing this. Or someone's like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to let everybody know my secrets up front all the time, and I'm just gonna test everybody. And it almost kind of is this turns into this experiment rather than a human connection. You know what I mean? Of I want to be super upfront with all my secrets, and I want to see if they're going to stick around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I'm going to make sure that I don't feel ashamed from my past mistakes. Like if I cheated on my girlfriend in college, or if I made an immoral decision and they're like, you know what? I don't need to care about that anymore. When in all reality, you know what? Yes, it's good to care about that. It's it's a learning lesson, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, like, I think of it as, there's been this, like, trend of being my most authentic self, and that has turned into then, "Let me just share it
Yeah.
all," and it's like,
Yeah.
is that your most authentic self, or is that, like, I'm like, I think of the TV show Shameless, where I'm like, like, the stuff that happens on Shameless is so unhinged that it's
Yeah.
like, it's almost like this is so cringy to watch, but
Yeah.
yeah, they might be living their most authentic lives, but at what cost? Like, and
Yeah.
so I think
Absolutely.
about yeah, like, I think about, like, how we can like, authenticity has boundaries, and
Yeah.
shame will sometimes maybe be like a, "I once felt that like, "Ooh, that didn't feel good," and I can remember that so that I don't do that again. Like, that
Yeah.
it can be sort of a nice, like, memory box of, like, that
Yeah,
I
to
felt
guide.
that pain. Yeah, like, I felt that pain before. Let me not
Yeah.
touch that hot stove twice by, oversharing or telling someone something really inappropriate or whatever it might have been.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, yeah, especially, and even say experiencing, I don't know. I think of, I mean, I know you say the example of Shameless, and I think of The Office, like the first 2 seasons of The Office, of like, with Pam and Jim, and like those first 2 seasons, like even with all those characters, I felt awkward watching it because everybody's getting used to each other. The writers were like, "We're gonna see where this goes. We have no idea where it's gonna go," but it was like kind of like this black and white. Like the character development wasn't really great. And once Michael like really became in his character, you're like, okay, now I can start feeling the momentum. And then they had everybody hooked. Um, and and yeah, I also think about Shameless and like the internal experiences of watching Shameless, and it's just like chaos that it doesn't even feel like after watching an episode, it feels like you need to breathe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I will admit, I've actually never watched The Office. I've seen the
What?
first episode. I've, like, tried. So I've seen the first episode, like, 4 times and just haven't gotten past it. So I will d and it's funny because people make references, and I'm like, "I want to
Yeah.
know so badly what's happening."
Yeah.
But I do get, like, the Jim and Pam kind of. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll put it on the
Wow.
list. However, I know I have homework,
Yeah.
but, um, put it on the list. But
It's
yeah, the shameless part, that one I get.
Yeah. People, at least probably once, maybe once a week, once every other week, people come up to me and say like, or I'll see people whispering and be like, "Oh my God, like, you know who that guy looks like?" Like, "Oh yeah." And then it's Lip from Shameless. Like, I
Oh,
get,
Jeremy Allen White.
man, I get, well, especially if I have longer hair and my hair's a mess. Like people are always like, "Oh my God, you look like that guy from The Bear, or you look like the Lip from Shameless." I'm like, they're like, "Oh, do you act exactly like him?" I'm like, "No, no, I don't." Yeah, but
Like,
yeah,
funny enough, I don't act like a
yeah,
fictional character. That's so
exactly.
funny.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, no, especially in college, it followed me everywhere.
That's wild. So you were the Wheaties guy and you were also
I was
Lit from
also, yeah,
Shameless.
right, yeah, Lip from Shameless, and yeah, but yeah, it's crazy. But
So
yeah,
funny.
so good examples of how to experience like a good amount of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think, um, sometimes I think shame can be a motivator too, where
yeah,
if we, and I'll also get into this, like shame can be a motivator and it can also be where it keeps us stuck. So
yeah,
when we start to experience parts of ourselves that we ourselves want to shine that vulnerable light on, right? Like, so the way to start to deal with shame is by what Brene Brown calls the reckoning or walking into our story. So it's by understanding what it is that the shame where how it exists, like what are the roots, what's the history behind it, getting curious about the feelings and how it's making us act or feel and behave. So I think that it's really getting curious around what the shame for ourselves is.
yeah,
So I'll also go into because we mentioned narcissism and we can't really talk about shame without talking about narcissism too.
yeah,
So Shame's like a really narcissistic actually, the definition behind narcissism are deep levels of shame. So or how narcissism stems from are deep levels of shame. So if someone is so disliking of themselves and just so deep in self-loathing, they're going to act defensive. They're going to be gaslighting. They're going to be blaming everybody else because the idea of taking any sort of accountability feels like it's hitting on the wounds of I'm not enough. And if I have to look at how I'm not enough, it becomes way too painful. So I have to make it someone else's fault. I'm
yeah,
going to switch that story around, which is how then again, that defensive gaslighting kinds of, displacement to use another one or like suppression of feelings, like that, all of
yeah,
that is going to exist
yeah,
for people who experience high levels of narcissism.
yeah, yeah. Um, I I hope it's okay that I say this, but I also think
Yeah.
the number one example in America right now is Trump. And
Yes.
yeah, as far as just being from being a political figure, and there's not, and I mean, I don't know. I think with past presidents, we've seen some type of shame, or him talking about like them talking about some type of experiences too, right? But with Trump, there's not a lot. And do we have this rhetoric of limited shame also means power control and potential elimination, like eliminating weaknesses and things like that? Or ultimately, if externally we're not going to show that, does that inherently mean that there's this deep sense of like these negative cognitions that are just like flowing with him, and he's just using those defense mechanisms that you were saying right now too, and then that attracts a certain population too, right?
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
think people see themselves in it. Like, I think that,
yeah,
like, I mean, every cult leader is a narcissist. So
yeah,
it's like, it's almost like that there can be this allure to it because it's like, I'm so I call it false confidence because it's not stemming from a true sense of self-trust. It's stemming from a true sense of grandiosity and inflated ego
yeah,
because I feel so bad in myself. So there's this extreme juxtaposition within the narcissistic realm. And we can even take this outside the DSM because we can't, Drew and I cannot diagnose our president. But if we kind of take it more into the
yeah,
anecdotal narcissistic realms, like I mean, it stems from the Greek mythology of Narcissus. So Narcissus literally falls in love with a reflection of himself under a spell because he can't love Echo. So it's like he doesn't love like someone else, falls in love with the reflection of him, and literally cannot break free from that reflection. Everything he sees is like he's just trying to get to that reflection. What he sees, it feels like it's
yeah,
hollow, it's empty, and he can't stop chasing it. So eventually
yeah,
he dies and molts into a flower in Greek mythology. But what that really is like he's very isolated, he's very alone, sees everything as an extension of himself. And
yeah,
that is how narcissism then developed. It was from this story. So we think about what shame does is that it boxes us in into our own ego. And
yeah,
then we're stuck in ourselves. It's a very rigid place to be. There's a lot of research around how narcissism and neuroticism, the personality
yeah,
trait in the big five, go hand in hand. Again, it's very, very stuck.
yeah, absolutely. And then I think about how it approaches other people, uh, and yeah, and I think other people attempting to cover up like their own wounds of, oh, if I take on the characteristics, or this person will protect me from my own wounds. As far as like viewing it as a protector, right? Um, and that's a dangerous game to play. Because I was gonna say, obviously, like with those personality traits you had mentioned, it's not inapproachable. This isn't an approachable person as far as like a narcissist goes. But as far as like if you're going to like blindly follow somebody or blindly like lead a company, right? Then you're gonna want that personality figure to be your protector as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And if that leader is looking to everyone around them to essentially inflate their ego and that's
yeah,
how they're leading the company, then it's going to be a very tense environment to say the least.
yeah,
Because it's going to create unpredictability. It creates instability because it's you are all an extension of me. And
yeah.
no one's going to be able to predict as to what that person's thinking and feeling on any given day.
Yeah. And I guess I also think of maybe with people who are following that type of personality might have like difficulty with like toxic trauma previously, or some type of toxic shame because instability, unpredictability, and chaos also arrive in trauma. But then there's also a risk in leaving that too. So people don't really necessarily want to leave the home that carries the chaos, unpredictability, um, it, things of that nature because it's comfortable with them, right? And so then they are a little bit more susceptible to following these types of leaders.
Right. Yeah, there's a familiarity to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um,
so true.
yeah. But I was gonna say, did you want to continue with the Brene Brown example?
Sure, yeah, 'cause the next part is the rumble, which is owning our story, getting really honest about the stories that we're making up and about our struggle, and then we have to challenge these confabulations, which are the lies that we tell ourselves, and the assumptions that come with it. So we're looking to determine truth, what is self-protection, and what needs to change if we're going to lead more integrated lives.
Yeah.
So the owning shame piece might actually be the hardest part to do. So
Yeah.
even
Vulnerability.
in
Vulnerability 101.
vulnerability, it
Yeah.
is. It's so true because when you start to own it, then that means you're accountable for it. So it's to take it again, kind of analogy of the 12-step programs. Like when they say that the first step is overcoming denial, it's like that part is kind of like the reckoning where it's like,
Mm.
oh, now I have to actually look at what's happening and say that I am powerless against the substance. And then you can
Yeah.
kind of translate that to like, I've been powerless against my shame story. I've been powerless in this relational dynamic or whatever it might be. Right. And then it's like, okay, if I were to own this and actually say that like I'm accountable for it, and now I have to get curious about it, I'm really going to start to maybe feel judgmental around it and take the active practice of how can I create a more curious space than a judgmental space when I'm rumbling with my story.
Yeah. Definitely. And I was even thinking about the ninth grader who's not getting enough playing time in football right now and not getting enough snaps as far as like the narrative that he's constructing from that, right? Um, as far as like rather than seeing it as an opportunity, then acknowledging him internally seeking of like why am I feeling this way? We're not acknowledging that like he's creating so much resistance right there versus acknowledgement also means leaning into discomfort. And once you lean into your discomfort, your world opens up, right? Um, like emotionally and physically. Of once your world opens up, then you realize, oh, I'm willing to risk something. I'm willing to risk to continue to come to the practices and to the games. And I might not have enough playing time. I might not be the most talented on the field. But however, I'm going to develop the neural cognition that I'm going to be okay. And you kind of just drop the rope um, and and accept that I'm going to have these feelings, but it doesn't mean that these feelings are going to create a certain narrative within me.
Right. That there's a boundary there, that there's feelings that they begin and they end, and that I'm not taking them and internalizing them and holding on to it to say that it's part of me.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But yeah, and
Yeah.
then we got one more as far as a revolution, as far as Brene Brown goes.
Yes.
Writing a new ending to our story based upon key learnings from our crumble and using this new braver story to change how we engage with the world. Um, yeah. And when I was talking about Mark Manson's podcast earlier, as far as unsolved, or is it solved or unsolved?
Solved.
Dumb. I guess why would it be unsolved? Right.
It's like the
Solved.
unsolved mysteries of the psychological realms. Yeah.
Right. The and as far as like what they were saying about shame, they related it to this network and this framework of how you experience pain. And that it's not necessarily pain itself, it's more the fact of what's the narrative around pain, right? If my um if I'm playing pickleball and then all of a sudden my elbow starts experiencing some type of pain, what type of pain am I going to experience around the source of pain? Does this ultimately mean that I'm never going to be playing pickleball again? Like maybe is it some type of rare cancer? And then my thoughts just kind of create this new narrative that's surrounding this, or is it do I just continue to play through the pain and eventually I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? So yeah, and I guess I think about the revolution. And this also dictates of how we experience pain with our identity, that there is an internal or external experience that attacks our sense of self-conceptualization and self-identity, and we are experiencing some type of pain. Is that if that pain is too scary and too powerful, then are we willing to acknowledge that pain? Are we willing, or do we continue to keep that pain in a dark place? And if I keep it there for long enough, I'm never gonna have to deal with it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do I shut it down or do I open it up?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, it's around kind of how do we take action based on a new idea of a self concept?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is scary because like we were saying earlier, there's a big risk there of how do I lose my entire framework of keeping something that I didn't have to touch for so many days, months, or years, and then building this and deconstructing that, and then um, constructing this whole new framework of how do I experience these emotions of something that was deeply developed within us from uh, 18 months to 3 years old to now we might be in our mid 30s, and how am I rewiring my nervous system at this point, right? So I think the thing that bothers me is this. You see it a lot on social media of being like, just try not to care. You know what I mean? Of that
Hmm.
you are always the number one priority, and you don't have to give a rip about about anything, right? But then we have to think about our values, our experiences, and what we experienced at 20 months. If there was any type of neglect or autonomy and what we felt power over or powerless, and it's and if we're at one side of the pendulum, we can't swing too far because that's going to feel really uncomfortable if we go from filled with shame to absolute like being shameless. So the goal is to ultimately, how do I swing from the pendulum kind of to the middle, or finding that good balance of, okay, I acknowledge that I've had failures in the past, but what are learning experiences that I've gained for this? Like, what have I gained and what have I learned, um, like through these emotional experiences, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That it's getting curious around it so that we can start to live our lives in more accordance with values who are becoming a sense of identity that we want to own and have
yeah,
versus maybe the one that we've been struggling and stuck in.
yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Sweet.
But
Did
yeah,
we
what do
do
you think,
this? Did
Brittany?
we? I think we did this. Did we just nail shame?
I'm not gonna lie. I think we hit it out of the park.
Sweet. All
Yeah,
right. Well, thank you again for coming on.
yeah. Thanks
And
for having me. This was awesome.
yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this. So
Yeah,
until next time, everyone, stay connected and see you next time.
yeah. We'll see you guys next time.